because we are now 230 days away from the midterms. And today we saw opposition to the war in Iran from inside the Trump administration. The director of National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, you might not know his name, but you will tonight. He resigned, writing the following, quote, "I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation," end quote. When Trump nominated Kent for the job last year, he was a very controversial pick with ties to right-wing extremists and many conspiracy theories. The president reacted to his resignation, telling reporters, quote, "I always thought he was weak on security. It's a good thing he's out because he said that Iran was not a threat, and Iran was a threat." Those are the words of the president. Meanwhile, America's partner in the Iran war, Israel, has intensified their attacks this week. The IDF said that it bombed Tehran again today. Iranian state media confirmed that the security chief who had been serving as the de facto leader of Iran and a powerful militia commander were both killed by Israeli airstrikes. And Iran is still targeting the UAE's energy infrastructure. For the first time in 5 days this afternoon, another tanker was hit near the Strait of Hormuz. European leaders so far have ignored Trump's calls to help the U.S. to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And today, the president slammed these allies for not offering more military assistance. In a war he did not consult with them on in the first place. That's kind of the issue. Watch this.
NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there. I'm disappointed in a couple of other countries, too. But they should be very thankful that this group of people feels the way we do. Because if a country like Iran was allowed to have the power of a nuclear weapon, if we didn't stop them, I stopped them twice.
With that, let's get smarter. With the help of our leadoff panel tonight, Jeff Mason is back, Washington correspondent and senior member of the White House and politics team at Bloomberg. Miles Taylor has returned, former chief of staff for the Department of Homeland Security during Trump's first administration. And Dave Weigel has returned to the 11th hour, political reporter for Semaphore. Miles, what do you make of Kent's resignation? How big of a deal is this? And for our audience, many of us don't know much about this guy.
Yeah, well, look, a couple of things. First, I would say about Joe Kent. He's one of the most MAGA people that was brought into the Trump administration. When Joe Kent was running for Congress, I remember he was a favored candidate on the MAGA side because he had shown solidarity with the January Sixers. He had basically portrayed them as victims of, political prosecution campaign. He towed the party line. He was isolationist. He was all the things that people in the MAGA movement wanted in their candidates. He's a former Green Beret. He served multiple tours of duty overseas, and he did some work for the CIA. And so to them, he was this perfect MAGA candidate, and he was named as Trump's top counterterrorism official in this administration. A defection like this from his national security team is significant for a lot of reasons, even if he just resigned in protest about the war. But Stephanie, it's so much bigger because in that resignation letter, Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, confirmed that the president lied about the war. The president and his team have portrayed that this was a war of necessity because there was an imminent threat to the United States. Joe Kent, who would have been privy to almost all of the relevant information about these threats in a top national security job, said, in fact, no, this was a war of choice. There was no imminent threat. That, Stephanie, is a bombshell.
Dave, in the letter, Kent praised the foreign policy that Trump campaigned on. Miles just laid it out. And he wrote that he undermined his America First platform. We have been talking about this since the war in Iran started. We've been talking about it since Venezuela. Do you think other significant members of the MAGA community are going to follow suit?
Well, it's already been happening. Very influential talkers in the MAGA movement. That's who's been leading it. Members of Congress, less so. Does Tom Massey have 30 guys behind him agreeing with him in public? He does not. But at the grassroots level, this was a very powerful argument for Trump for 10 years, that he was not going to start wars like this. He was not going to put boots on the ground. He could get a deal with Iran without invading. I had coffee today with a Republican candidate for governor, James Fishback in Florida, who's really appealing to younger, frustrated MAGA voters. And he told me that's one of the things that comes up more and more as people who are not voting for a war in Iran can't justify it. There was no sales job by the administration. Not that people are nostalgic for a 2003 style sales job like George W. Bush did, but no sales job to explain it's worth it for you to pay more money for a war that we said wasn't necessary. So Kent's letter really got a lot of traction. And you saw Kent's going to talk to Tucker Carlson in the next couple of days. He's going to be an active figure speaking out. This administration, Democrats I talked to were wondering if he'll run for Congress again. He has the potential to be the most, after Massey, after Rand Paul, one of the most prominent Republicans saying something that a lot of the base agrees with.